So I've been riding the new Series 2 Evolve GTR for the past month or so, and I've got a lot of thoughts to share. I've got the Bamboo all-terrain model, and in order to review this skateboard, I want to go through all the main features like the speed, the range, the motors, and that type of thing. And then I want to talk a bit about the things I love the most about this board. Finally, at the very end, I'm going to talk a bit about some of the things that I don't love as much. So first of all, let's talk a bit about the aesthetic of this board. And when I first saw it, I actually wasn't totally convinced, but it's really grown on me a lot. I actually really love how it's kind of an understated looking board in the fact that it's just black and brown. The exposed bamboo wood actually looks really nice in person, I think. And I've gotten so many comments from both friends and strangers down the street just saying that it looks really cool. Even some of the details, like for example, there's the GTR logo on the top and the bottom of the board in metal. It actually looks really nice and really premium in real life. Even the battery underneath looks really nice and compact, and even the Evolve logo on the battery looks quite nice. Now when it comes to the bamboo deck itself, it's quite a big deck with a length of about 38 inches. But one of the things I noticed almost immediately was actually the fact that because it's bigger, I can have my stance a bit broader, which means I feel more steady on my feet. With my previous board, which is an XY Flex, it actually is a bit smaller of a deck, and so my feet and my stance is a bit narrower, which means I have to concentrate a bit more in terms of keeping my balance. The deck of the Bamboo is also a little bit flexy, but not super flexy, which I actually really like, which again, comparing it to my XY Flex, which is super flexy, having that little bit less flex in the board actually makes me feel a bit more stable and like there's something a bit more solid under my feet, especially when I go over bumps and things. It just feels a bit more steady. It doesn't feel quite as jumpy in a way. It's got a nice slight concave, which is good for carving and just cruising around. And yeah, like I said, I'm a fan of the exposed bamboo look with the spray on grip tape, and I've gotten plenty of comments from people confirming that I think it looks cool as well. So next, let's talk a bit about the battery. So it's 504 watt hours. In terms of charge times, I found it to be pretty good. It's taken me around 3 hours for it to fully charge, and charging it up from maybe 60% doesn't take that long at all in my experience, maybe an hour max. So it's been really good. It's got a small charging port on one side, and then on the other side, you've got the power button, which turns the board itself on. The other good thing about the battery is I didn't notice any battery sag. Again, on my previous board, once you got down to maybe 30% battery, the acceleration will start to sag and slow down, and your braking slows down as well. Whereas I didn't notice that on the Evolve. When I got down to 20% and below, it was still accelerating and braking as it would at like 80% battery, which is really good. I was very impressed with that. Now let's talk a bit about the motors and the acceleration, because it's crazy. My previous board had 2 motors, each worth 750 watts. So that gives you in total 1500 watts of power. Whereas on the Evolve GTR, you've got 2 3000 watt motors. So that makes up 6000 watts power in this board, which to me is crazy. And you can really feel it. There's 3 different modes with the Evolve. First is eco mode. And this is kind of good for beginners, or if you're just out for a casual cruise, it's really nice because it's not going to burn through the battery too fast, and it keeps the acceleration nice and gentle. Then you've got sport mode, which is the next step up, and this is kind of more like what I'm used to riding, and it's got a really solid kick in the acceleration. This gets you up to the top speed of about, I find I get up to about 35 kilometers an hour at 90 kilos. I'm roughly 90 kilos at the moment. And I've spent most of my time in sport mode. Sport mode is just heaps of fun. It just feels great, feels really smooth. The acceleration is incredibly smooth, as well as the braking. And it's just everything that I need and more. But then on top of that, you've got the GTR mode. And honestly, the GTR mode is crazy. I've never experienced anything like it. Even after a month of riding this board, I'm still getting used to the GTR mode when I fully punch it from a standstill takeoff. And this is just because it accelerates so fast. It literally feels like I'm going to fly off the board, and I really have to lean into it to make sure that I can stay on. And it's honestly so much fun. And the other benefit I think to the GTR mode, which I think I'll probably end up using it more for, is off-road, because it gives you extra power, extra torque, and it means you pretty much don't even feel hills. Like, it's crazy. If it's in sport mode, the GTR feels fine on hills. If you go up a hill, the only reason you really know that you're going up a hill is because the board starts to tilt upwards. Otherwise, it almost accelerates the same as if it's going on a flat surface. And that's pretty much just thanks to that 6000 watts of energy that's powering the board. So with all that energy behind you, you want to make sure that the braking is good. And I can confirm in my experience that the braking on the Evolve GTR is really good. I've had no issues with it so far. It feels really smooth, even when I'm wanting to come down a hill in a nice, smooth, controlled manner. I've had no problems with the braking and it feels really solid. But also obviously I wanted to talk a bit about the off-road capabilities of the Bamboo All-Terrain, because this is the first electric skateboard or any skateboard that I've ever been able to ride off-road, and it honestly feels so good. I love being able to ride off-road on this thing. I think the thing I like the most about it is just the fact that you feel so free to just go wherever you want, especially if I'm out in a park or even if I'm down riding by the beach or something and I just want to go somewhere slightly off the paved path or wherever I'm skating currently. It's just so good to be able to just go where you want to go, and you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to think about, oh, I'll have to get off my board and carry it there or whatever. You can just skate pretty much wherever you want, and it just feels great. So I think it's going to be hard for me to go back to a regular street setup after using all-terrain wheels. And while we're talking about the wheels, let's talk about the fact that these are pneumatic tires, so they pump up with air, whereas my old skateboard and other skateboards I've ridden before used urethane wheels. And I think the main thing for me has been the fact that the pneumatic tires feel a lot smoother. They absorb shocks a lot better. So whenever I go over bumps or small potholes or sticks and stones, you don't feel it anywhere near as much as you do on urethane wheels. I was actually thinking this might even make your board a bit safer because it's able to absorb shocks. You're less likely to be thrown off. I've definitely experienced in the past when I've hit rocks or small cracks and stuff like that, if I'm not going fast enough, it'll throw me off the board because the urethane just stops. Whereas with the pneumatic tires, it feels smoother, I feel more stable and secure, and I feel like I'm less likely to be thrown off. So that's something to consider if you're looking at a urethane tire versus a pneumatic tire. Now with the all-terrain tires, you're supposed to be able to get about 30 kilometers of range on the Bamboo GTR. I'm quite confident I get 30 kilometers if I was in eco mode. However, I did a range test in sport mode and I was riding pretty aggressively. I was taking off-road here and there and riding at top speed for decent stretches, and I was able to pretty easily get 25 kilometers, and that was with about 20% battery left. So I don't think you're going to have any issues with the battery in terms of what Evolve says you're going to get versus what you actually get. Again, I weigh about 90 kilos, so if you light it, you probably get even more range than that. And like I said, in terms of top speed, I've hit about 35 kilometers. I think maybe my max might have been 36 or 37, but this feels so fast. I've said in previous videos, I can't really imagine why anyone wants to go faster than 35 or 40 kilometers an hour on an electric skateboard. To me, any faster than that is kind of crazy. When I first took it out of the box and took it out for a ride, because it's got the double kingpin trucks, I found it was so much more maneuverable, and as I sped up, I thought that I was getting speed bubbles. It was just a matter of getting used to it, and I found that I was able to max out the top speed without getting any speed bubbles really at all. Now since then, I have tightened the trucks just slightly, just to give me a little bit more stability at top speed, and I found that works really well for me. And while we're talking about the trucks, the GTR Bamboo has double kingpin trucks, and this is my first double kingpin setup on an electric skateboard, and this is also something that I really like, mainly because it gives you just so much better maneuverability. I don't think I actually realized this until I went back to my old skateboard after riding the Evolve for a few days, and I realized how little maneuverability I actually had. Even to turn broad corners on my previous skateboard would be a struggle or impossible, whereas with the Evolve, it's so easy to turn pretty much any corner within reason because the double kingpin trucks give you just that much more maneuverability. But again, I think I'm going to struggle to go back to a single kingpin setup just because having that double kingpin just gives you so much more maneuverability. And even for carving, it just feels so nice to be able to carve on these trucks. Like, they feel super smooth and you can just get real deep carves, which just weren't possible on my previous single kingpin setup. All right, so next up, let's talk a bit about the Evolve remote. Now this is the new phase remote, and honestly, this feels like a really high quality remote. It feels super sturdy, and it's my first ever trigger setup for a skateboard remote. And I've heard some people don't like it, some people do like it, and I actually really like it. It kind of reminds me of when I was a kid and I had some RC remote controlled cars and it had kind of a trigger remote setup. It's kind of a similar sort of feel, but like in a good way, like in a nostalgic way. The trigger itself feels really nice to pull. It's really smooth. Same with the brake on top. It feels really smooth. Doesn't feel flimsy or anything like that. I'm also a huge fan of the display. It's full color, which is really nice. I'm a big fan of the full color display. It's got haptic feedback, It charges with USB-C, which is really nice. And you've got heaps of different setting options right on the remote, which is also really nice. So all that to say, I'm definitely a fan of the Evolve remote. All right, so let's talk a bit about the things I really love about this board. And the first thing is just, like I said before, the smooth ride. It just feels so smooth. I think it's a combo of the smooth acceleration and braking, pneumatic tires that take out a lot of the bumps on the road, and that slight flex in the Bamboo that just takes it out and absorbs any major shock. I also absolutely love, like I said, being able to go off-road. I think this is a huge game changer. Like I said, you feel so much more free to just be able to go where you want and not be restricted by roads. I also really love the aesthetic now. I think it looks awesome. You can really customize the Bamboo. You can get different colored tires, get different colored hubs, which is really cool. And you can even get LED strips that go underneath the board to light it up. I absolutely love the GTR mode. And even though I don't really use it all the time because it's just too intense, the sheer power of this board just is so much fun. And just the adrenaline kick of being able to accelerate so quickly is just amazing. And lastly, the build quality of the Evolve is honestly really impressive. This is kind of one of the main things I knew of Evolve, was the fact that they were known for having high quality boards, and I've definitely found it to be confirmed with the GTR. Everything from the charger to the accessories, the carry case that comes with the board itself, and the phase remote all feel really high quality. I feel like they're going to last forever, which is definitely not something that I would say of all electric skateboards that I've used. Now lastly, let's just talk a bit about the things I don't love quite as much about this board, and some of these are kind of personal preference, so take that into account. But the first thing is the fact that this is a very big board and it's quite heavy. It's around 10 kilos, I think. So it's not super portable. Like if you want to take it out and just do your grocery shopping or go sit in a cafe with friends, it is a little bit cumbersome and awkward to carry around. I usually grab it by the front trucks and then just drag it, but that's something to keep in mind. Second thing is that when you hold down the brake, it doesn't completely stop. So if you are on a small incline, it will keep rolling just really slowly. And I kind of wish that it would come to a complete stop. And the last thing is the fact that you have to turn on the board and the remote separately. If you turn the remote on, this won't automatically turn on the board. Whereas I've used other boards where the remote just turns on the board automatically. So that would be kind of nice if they both turned on at the same time. So in conclusion, the Evolve GTR Series 2, I absolutely love this board. I own 3 electric skateboards now, and for sure, this is the most fun I've ever had on an electric skateboard. It is an absolute beast in terms of power and capabilities with off-road. I reckon you definitely won't be disappointed if you pick this up. Use my link in the description if you do want to check out the board. And let me know if you've got any other questions. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you might have in the comments section. But other than that, make sure you check out this video here where I talk about the best and the worst things about electric skateboarding. Other than that, I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you very soon in the next video.